I'll be completely honest. I did not have faith in Fox to be able to do this. I mean, why would I? To play an overtime game the night before, play super heavy minutes, go for 60 points where he just looked exhausted at the end of that game. Absolutely exhausted. With the way he was playing, the way he was getting inside at every opportunity. He had no help. So it was him on the ball every single possession to then come just one night later and to be able to put up 49 points and carry this team to a win is insane. Absolutely insane. 109 points in 24 hours. I mean, just such a special 24 hours. I wish we had gone 2-0, but I'm just very happy we didn't go 0-2 in this span. Imagine we go 0-2 when Fox had 109 points combined in 2 games. That would have been very sad. But in this game, you had other guys actually step up, and I'm glad I don't have to start talking about, Keegan Murray right away because they won. If they lost, would have been coming for him. But we can talk, more about the positives, the Trey Lyles, the Kevin Herters, the guys that really contributed. The bench was awesome in this game, and they just fought and scrapped, only having two guys that you can comfortably give the ball to really create anything in De'Aaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin. Those are the only guys that I'm confident handling the ball. The other three guys that I'm confident handling the ball were out in DeMar DeRozan, Malik Monk, and Domantas Sabonis. And I have a theory of why Fox went off. Apparently, he didn't know that they were playing the Jazz today. He's always focused on the present, so he's focused on the game against Minnesota. So he thought they were playing Portland, I guess. And in his press conference after the Minnesota game, when he was kind of talking about him going back and forth with Keegan about their career highs, he said that Keegan's career high of 47 doesn't really count because it's against the Utah Jazz. And I feel like that's a wild thing to say the night before you play the Utah Jazz. But then he came out and he backed it up. So I felt like he had to back it up. If you're going to say something like that, take a random shot at the Jazz. You got to come out. He says Keegan's 47 doesn't count. Okay, then he'll just drop 49. And it's the way that Fox is going about this. He's going about it in a way that it felt like we didn't see last season. I don't feel like we saw this Fox last season. We saw it 2 seasons ago, not to this extent because his career high before these 2 games was 44 points and he surpassed it twice. This is a whole nother level of De'Aaron Fox. But the way he's going about it, the way he's just attack, attack, attack on the second night of a back-to-back after an overtime game, and he only took 4 3-pointers. That's a criticism I've had of him, is on the second night of back-to-backs when it feels like he gets tired, he just starts jacking from 3. And he's been saying it. He said it after the Minnesota game. I think he even said it before that, where he talked about how he was challenged to get into the paint and get more paint touches. And that's exactly what he's been doing. 19 free throws, only 4 3-point attempts, 4 out of his 30 field goal attempts from 3. That's a great, great sign. He can't play this way for 82 games, but I do think he can play like this more than he has been. Last season, it felt like he wasn't going to the mid-range as much. Felt like his floater wasn't as good as the season prior. Now it's just mid-ranger, into the floater, into finishing at the rim or drawing contact. He is on a level that this franchise has never seen right now. And he tried to scare us at the end with those free throws, but I think I can give him a break. But, missing 3 straight free throws as well as that mid-ranger, which was around the free throw line. But we can give him a break because he scored 109 points in 24 hours. Just insane. And it's not like on the defensive end, he's pulling a Luka Doncic against the Jazz. I don't know if any of you saw that play where Luka just took the defensive possession off to give John Collins the winning dunk. He ain't doing that. He's taking on the lead ball handler every possession. He's going for steals. He's being disruptive, and he's doing it on both ends. This was a game of experimentation for the Kings. In the first half, it felt like the rotations we were putting out there were just like they were rolling a dice or something, to decide who was going out there. They were playing rock, paper, scissors or something on the bench. the rotations were wild. To start the game, you had Fox, Herter, Keegan, Doug McDermott, and Trey Lyles. I was pretty happy with that lineup coming out. We tried the Alex Len experiment and the double big experiment last game. Didn't really work out. Alex Len has not been at his best this season, although this was his best game. And so I was pretty happy with a more offensive minded unit to, hopefully help Fox. And, it did somewhat. It created the space for him to be able to get inside. And you had Kevin Herter and you had Trey Lyles both hitting 5 threes, and that's huge. And this Kings team shot 15 more 3-pointers than the Jazz. And I think that's a very interesting statistic, just because when this team has DeMar DeRozan or they have Domantas Sabonis, they're not shooting that many threes. And I'm not saying that that's not how it should be. That's absolutely how it should be, because as you can see here, more 3-point attempts doesn't mean we're blowing the Jazz out or anything, but it's just the way that this specific group of guys had to play. They had to knock down threes to be able to win this game, and the Jazz shot just as well, both teams shooting 46% from the 3-point line, but the difference is in the attempts, and the Kings limiting the Jazz to 26 attempts I think was very important. The way the Jazz got that back was shooting 17 more free throws. Neither team was particularly good from the line, with the Jazz at about 74%, Kings at 72%, but the Jazz were just getting to the free throw line at will. So that's kind of how they were changing things in terms of their, shot chart and shot selection. They were trying to get to the rim, but I mean, some of it was just drawing fouls so much that they were in the penalty, so they didn't even have to be in the paint to be able to get free throws. And this was a very poorly officiated game. I mean, the officials had no idea what they were doing, especially down the stretch, but really throughout this game. Shout out to Mike Brown for keeping those challenges, whereas Will Hardy throwing his away in the first half for something. I can't even remember. It was a really dumb challenge, whatever it was. The last 2 minutes of this game took over 20 minutes of real time. It was an absolute slog. But I think in these last 2 games where the Kings have been shorthanded, especially in this one without Sabonis, we've seen the Kings' ability to fight and scrap for a win. And we've seen a little bit more of the depth. And I think if the Kings can get through this stretch with some of these injuries, they seem like short-term-ish injuries with Sabonis and DeMar's backs, Monk maybe a week or so with his ankle, right? You get through that stretch, especially you get through the Atlanta game, and then you have a bigger break until the next game. You get through this stretch, and I think it's going to be a positive for the rest of the season going forward, because we haven't really seen a lot of the depth for the Kings being utilized this season. And in this game and in the last game, we were forced to utilize it. I remember last season, the coaching staff was constantly experimenting with different lineups, different guys, and they caught a lot of flack for it from Kings fans because it didn't always work, but you never know when you're going to need someone to step up. And so I think it's going to be a massive positive to have to see what these guys are about, give them some time in the rotation. Let's go from the beginning of this game where it was an offensive game. And I mean, that was to be expected with the starting lineup that the Kings went for, also the starting lineup that the Jazz went for. Both teams were spaced out with kind of small ball stretch fives. The Jazz without Walker Kessler, the Kings without Domantas Sabonis. And neither team could really get a stop. The Kings were getting good looks from beyond the arc, and Fox obviously getting whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. He was a perfect 7 for 7 from the field in the first quarter. I mean, it was just insane. He was just looking at his hand like, what is going on? I'm this hot. And to do that right after the 60-point game, it was like, no way, is he really doing this again? But there was, when he went out, pretty sloppy play. And again, that is to be expected. They were sloppy play. The Kings fouled 2 3-point shooters. John Collins was bullying his way to the rim. He had a really good first quarter, and the Kings were experimenting. Mason Jones was in before Keon Ellis, and maybe it had to do with Keon not shooting the ball last night. He had a horrible game in this one, but I'll get to that. We saw Orlando Robinson, who I was super excited to see after he played in Stockton last night, put up 26 points, looked good, coming back from injury. So for him to have been out injured and then he's playing on a back-to-back. No, he didn't play in the overtime game, but he was playing minutes in Stockton. And for him to come in for his first NBA game this season, he had a very positive impact. And I'm very excited to see what we can get from him going forward, because he came in, posted up, got 2 points, hit a three, was rebounding the ball. He was just moving around the court very well. And it was interesting because the Kings went with 4 different centers in this game, in Trey Lyles, Orlando Robinson, then they went to Alex Len, then they went to Isaac Jones. And I thought all 4 of those guys had pretty good games. But Fox having 18 points in the first quarter. He had that one play where he lost his shoe. I was kind of scared he was injured for a second. And then when he kept going, I was like, did he just lose his shoe, get it back on, and then still go and score? That was an insane play that I feel like kind of probably gets forgotten about in what was a crazy game for him. And the defense, I thought it settled down a little bit when the Kings had more traditional centers in the game. Maybe that also had to do with the Jazz just making substitutions and not having their starting lineup in the game. This definitely was not a defensive masterclass from the Kings by any means, but they were outscoring them. In the second quarter, we went to Alex Len. He made some really nice plays where he got the ball, kicked it out to, I forget who it was, Trey Lyles, I think, for 3. Keon also came in the second quarter, and he had some nice defensive moments to when he first got out there. But Alex Len, he also had a nice putback. I mean, he was just kind of the Alex Len from last season. I feel like we saw just more in control of himself, and Fox was still just toying with him, drawing fouls. And that second quarter is really when the Jazz just started loading up on Fox. He would get the ball on the wing, and they were so far into the gap, they were not letting him drive. And he was just able to kick the ball to Trey Lyles every time. And Trey Lyles was knocking him down, 5 for 7 from 3. We don't win this game if Trey Lyles isn't shooting like that, because Trey Lyles is the guy that created this space for Fox. I will say in that second quarter, I was singing the praises of Alex Len. He got beat off the dribble quite a bit. So that's kind of where we went to Isaac Jones. That's kind of what Isaac Jones was good at. He wasn't getting beat off the dribble. We went to him. Immediately he comes in. And the way that I knew, I mean, Fox, we knew he was already feeling it. But the way I knew it was really, really special was Fox with a perfect lob to Isaac Jones. I'm like, what's going on? Fox throwing good alley-oop passes? This guy's on another level. He never does that. He had 9 assists, only 4 turnovers. And I really liked what Isaac Jones brought to this game. His numbers, 12 minutes, went 2 for 2 from the field, 2 for 2 from the line, provided that lob threat. He fouled a lot as a rookie. That's kind of to be expected. And the officiating was, suspect for sure on those. But he had a really nice block in that second quarter. And then I'll get to it in the fourth, but they went back to him in the fourth quarter, which to have that sort of confidence in a guy is pretty cool. I actually tweeted before the game. I said, I feel like Mike Brown might do something crazy and start Isaac Jones. And I wasn't correct. But Isaac Jones did get minutes and he did play well. So I was very happy to see that. Keegan, about midway through the second, got his first shot attempt. And it was after he passed up a shot where he was open. There was a guy, multiple shooters next to him that were open. He just had to do something with the ball, preferably shoot. But if he would have passed right away, that would have been fine too. And he just stood there looking confused, looking conflicted. And I was like, what happened to this guy? And then after a timeout there, he got his first shot attempt, knocked it down. But it's just like, how does it take you until midway through the second quarter to have your first shot attempt? He played 39 minutes and had 6 shot attempts for 5 points. Like, that just can't happen. You're supposed to be the second best player on this team that we were running out there today, obviously. To have 6 shot attempts, like, that's crazy. To have times where Jordan Clarkson is on him and he's just backing the ball out, it's so bad. It was so frustrating. I felt like against the Wolves, for most of the game, he was aggressive and he didn't have it quite. But he still was taking shots, and he shot 14 times, I think it was, last game. And he scored a good amount, but then it was that overtime period or late in the fourth when he started passing up shots. And we saw that come out from him again. And it's just like we need offense from wherever we can get it with this lineup. And luckily other guys turned up. But the fact that Keegan was not even taking shot attempts and that he wasn't aggressive was super disappointing. I thought he got that first shot attempt in the second quarter. I'm like, here we go. This is when he starts getting aggressive. He got his first shot attempt. Sometimes that's all he needs. He just needs someone to tell him, and I assume that's what happened in that timeout that got him that shot. And then it just never came. And the end of the first half was super disappointing because the Kings had, I think it was a 12-point lead that got knocked down to 1. The officiating didn't help. Clear moving screen that led to a Jazz 3, a couple other things. You kind of saw it coming when Fox wasn't scoring on every possession, and then the Kings kind of went cold from 3. And you expect some of those droughts to happen in a game, so I wasn't necessarily mad at the offense other than Keegan, I guess. It was defensively that the Jazz got back in it late in that quarter. And then it was similar to start the third quarter, although Keegan got another open 3 to start the second half and hit it. So I'm like, again, here we go. And it just never came. But then a 10-0 run from the Jazz, living at the free throw line. And Herter, he had a great game. He was knocking down shots. He was trying to create things offensively. But that's kind of the problem, is he was having to try to make things happen off the dribble. And I mean, there were a few plays he made, and that's great. But then there were other times where it didn't look so good and he just went nowhere, because that's just not his game. He's a guy who picks his spots to put the ball on the floor. He's not a guy that always should be forced to, catch a grenade and create something. But then Keon came back in that third quarter, and that's where he was really bad and where he got benched immediately and didn't play again, I think. He passed up a shot, just threw it away, he was awful offensively. And so him and Keegan were the big disappointments from this game. And the thing with Keon, I said it coming into the season. I, don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so. Like, this is a guy in Keon Ellis who, it's his technically third year, but like really he hasn't even played a full season of NBA games. He's a young player. What we got last season from him was incredible, but I felt a rough patch was coming, and this is it. And he's just got to learn from it, because he absolutely has the skills. Obviously, defensively, I believe he's a very good three-point shooter. The numbers say that. And so he's just got to work through this stretch, And that's why Herter is starting, because he's the vet between the shooting guards. And while Herter may not always be the best, I'm not someone who wants to bench Herter. I thought they could start Keon in this game, like instead of Doug McDermott, but they went with the more offensive-minded guy. And that obviously proved to be the right choice, because it was Herter and McDermott in that third quarter that kept us attached. The Jazz started to pull away, and it was those two guys hitting big shots. And they just kept us in it enough for Fox to come back in the game late in the third quarter. And Herter got to the line, went 1 of 2. Why isn't Herter a better free throw shooter? I don't know. But then Fox got to the line twice. Len had 2 straight buckets, one a putback, and then he had another one, both off Fox getting inside. And so it was just all Fox. The offense without him just relied on guys hitting 3-point shots. Luckily, they just barely did enough from deep in this game. They got it down to 4 at the end of the third quarter, and then the start of the fourth quarter, Utah they hit some lucky shots. You had that Markkanen bank 3, because it felt like the Kings were playing well, and they got it down low, and they were scoring. Len was getting some massive offensive rebounds. He also got a big block, and it was frustrating because we hadn't gained any ground, because the Jazz were just making some tough shots and getting some bounces on the rim. Fox was doing everything he can. Lyles hit a 3 to keep us attached. And then the big one was Jordan McLaughlin getting the 3 to bounce in. And I was just like, thank you to the basketball gods. You saw the Jazz had some lucky bounces on the rim, and you gave us one, and we needed that so badly. Herter had those 2 looks that, well, they tied it. Then Herter had two looks down one, two really good looks to take the lead, and he missed both of those after he had been so good and was knocking down shots. I was just like, no way, this is how it goes. But the Kings were able to get enough stops. Fox did his thing, and then Mike Brown made a big move with about 2 minutes to go in this game. Markkanen at the free throw line. Jazz go up 3, and Mike Brown subs in Jordan McLaughlin for Isaac Jones. Isaac Jones had been closing. He made some nice plays, but he fouled. And so Mike Brown goes with the more veteran presence. He goes with the guy that can spread the floor. And boy, did that pay off. Because Jordan McLaughlin hits the massive 3 off a nice drive from Keegan Murray and pass. So as much as Keegan had a horrible game, we got to give him props for that play, and McLaughlin knocks down the huge corner 3 to put us up 2. And Keegan, he was playing good defense, but we just needed him offensively in this game. Keegan, I think, got a big steal on Sexton, and then the Kings go down. Fox gets it stripped from him, and I think they called a jump ball, which was insane. And just the amount of contact that was going on inside against the Kings versus what was happening on the other end. I mean, it was just the officiating, man, in this game. It was so uneven. It was very much a game where the refs waited to see if the ball was going to go through the hoop before calling a foul. But they only called illegal screens on the Kings for most of the game. Jazz got away with some egregious ones. Luckily, they did call one in the fourth, I think it was. But the Kings retaining their challenges, that was huge. Not wasting it on some dumb thing in the first half just because someone's frustrated. You retain your challenges, and the new rule where you can challenge an out-of-bounds call, and if there's a foul that causes the ball to go out of bounds on the player, then they call the foul. And Fox clearly fouled. Don't know how you missed that. And Fox goes to the line, misses one, so not great. But the Kings retain the ball because it goes out on Markkanen, I think it was. Again, we had to challenge that because they got the call wrong again. But 2 straight big challenges. Fox misses the pull-up. Huge defensive play from Trey Lyles. I thought he let John Collins by too easily, but he recovered to get the contest. Huge defensive rebound from Kevin Huerter. Kevin Huerter's rebounding in this game was awesome. And then Fox goes to the line, misses both again. Then Sexton's like falling down and keeping his dribble alive somehow. They call a timeout. Everyone's confused how many timeouts they have. It's chaos. And then really heads up play from De'Aaron Fox. The ball goes inside. It's bobbling around, but Jordan Clarkson picks it up. Immediate foul from Fox. That was huge. I thought the Kings should have fouled even earlier than that. But it worked out very well. Fox gets that foul, and Clarkson makes the first, has to miss the second, misses rim, so the Kings just get the ball. And, it wasn't the smoothest inbound from there, but Fox able to get it. Rasay helps him up, and he goes and he knocks down both free throws. This was just a huge game because it keeps the Kings on a solid pace here, even with the injuries. They're now 4 games into their 5-game stretch, and they're 2-2 in this 5-game stretch. They won the previous 2 5-game stretches by going 3-2 in both of them. Now they have a chance to do that again, even with the injuries. And if they're able to do that against Atlanta, they're in a great spot where you're on the exact pace you want to be with the injuries. Then guys are going to come back, and this team is starting to hit more 3-pointers. You're starting to see the depth play better. And you just kind of need to keep yourself in the race until you mesh and you go on that big streak. So that's why I felt like this game was very important. But we can look at some of the individual stat lines other than Fox. We already looked at him. Trey Lyles, 6 for 9 from the field, 5 for 7 from 3. Had that huge contest on John Collins. After he played over 40 minutes last night, he comes in again. And it's just so nice. Him scoring 17 points. Finding his way. He didn't have a preseason, had a really rough start to the season, but this is what we know Trey Lyles can do. And him in being the stretch 5 was so important to allowing Fox to do what he was doing because he kept the defense honest. When they tried to fill those gaps, he would punish them by knocking down the threes, and he made the necessary defensive plays Doug McDermott, he played 19 minutes, went 2 for 6 from 3. Those were big threes. We still haven't seen the huge Doug McDermott game, but he's starting to find it a little bit. I feel like kind of what we saw from Trey Lyles, where Trey Lyles just slowly built up until he, has this type of game. And so I feel like we're seeing that from Doug McDermott. He's been solid enough to play 19 minutes, and so that's what we love to see. Keegan, already talked about him a lot, but 39 minutes, 2 for 6 from the field. He had 5 fouls. Played solid defense. I had one foul on Markkanen off ball late that sent Markkanen to the line that I was very frustrated with. Kind of the same type of play that he got called for against Booker in the Suns game that allowed them to tie it late on the last possession of the game. But they just need him to be more aggressive, and maybe they should have had more minutes where he was out there without Fox, but they just needed to make a more concerted effort to get him the ball. But I mean, that's on him. Like, he had shots, he had opportunities where he had the ball against smaller players. He's not a guy that's going to blow by anyone, and so I understand when he has a tall, mobile defender, if he's getting guarded by Markkanen, yeah, that can be a tough matchup for him if he's trying to create off the dribble. But there were so many times where he had smaller defenders on him, and he would just back it out to the 3-point line. And he was just deferring to Fox every time. And you just have to give Fox a little bit of rest and shoot more than 6 shots. You got to shoot at least 15 shots in this game if you're Keegan Murray. How do you have 6 shot attempts? He hasn't been asked to be that scoring guy this season, but this was his opportunity. And if he was taking shots and just missing them, then you live with that. But it's so frustrating to see him not even getting the shots up. To only have 2 attempts from inside the arc, that's really bad. Moving on to Kevin Huerter, 34 minutes for him. He was asked to guard Jordan Clarkson a lot, which didn't go great. He got some good contests, but once Jordan Clarkson gets to his spot, that's tough. But what he did do really well defensively was defensive rebound. There were so many times where our big was battling with their big for a rebound, and he just comes from behind and grabs the ball. Massive ways to save possessions, to not allow the other team to get second possessions. And that's exactly how he needs to contribute. And I think other guards could learn from him. But 5 for 12 from 3 was huge after he just didn't show up against Minnesota. We needed him in this game, and he showed up. Him and Trey Lyles were the only other guys in double digits outside of Fox, with Huerter 18, Lyles 17. Then off the bench of Mason Jones, 8 minutes, just missed his 2 shots from deep. But the thing that I love from Mason Jones, 0 personal fouls, 0 turnovers. Those have been his problems. He was moving the ball well. He was rebounding the ball. He's defending well. He just needs to get that 3-point shot to start falling now. I'm not the highest on Mason Jones making an impact on this team, but he was better today than he had been in the past for this team. I already talked about Keon, 10 minutes, no points. Just zeros across the stat line other than 2 turnovers and 2 personal fouls. Jordan McLaughlin, 22 minutes, the only guy outside of De'Aaron Fox that really could operate the offense, and he did a good job of that, especially in the moments where Fox was off the court. He ran the offense very well, and that's exactly what we wanted to see from him when we signed him. 2 big threes, 5 assists, only 1 turnover, played solid defense, closed to this game, was a massive contributor. We just needed his steady presence on the ball because there's just no one else to do that. Isaac Jones, Orlando Robinson, Alex Len. I already talked about them a bunch, but all had kind of pretty solid games in different ways, really. But I'm very excited to see more of Orlando Robinson going forward because the flashes we saw were very encouraging. I feel like he's a guy that hopefully can be a little more steady when he catches the ball than Alex Len. Alex Len tends to turn the ball over a little bit. He didn't in this game. Alex Len had a great game. But if Orlando Robinson can kind of be that guy, or Isaac Jones as well, like not turning the ball over when they get it, when in the pick and roll and they're rolling to the rim, if they can catch it and make the right decision from there, that's really what's going to earn them minutes on the offensive end. There were definitely a few times where Keon had one Other guys, I think, had one where they felt like they were playing with Sabonis out there and they just immediately try to flip the ball to the center, whoever it was, and that whoever that center is coming up to set the screen instead of catch the ball and hand it off like Sabonis would. So you could see a few of those moments. Keon got pulled because of one of those moments pretty much. But you could see the different dynamic the team had without Sabonis. They're just so used to having Sabonis where they just throw the ball to him at every moment. And it's why Sabonis always has such high touch numbers. But now we are going to stay at home, play against Atlanta, who we had a tight game against earlier in this season. But we were playing against a depleted Atlanta team. We were playing against an Atlanta team that didn't have Dyson Daniels. It's going to be very interesting because we have a super hot Fox versus a Fox stopper in Dyson Daniels. So that should be interesting. The Hawks have won 2 in a row here against the Celtics and against the Wizards. They are going to be on the second night of a back-to-back after playing in Portland. I don't know who's going to be playing in this game. If we just assume it's going to be all of the guys sitting out again, I feel like that's kind of, not safe to assume, but that's what I would assume, just because you give them the game against Atlanta off and then they get a bunch more days off. I think like 3 more days off until the next game. I feel like that makes sense. So if the Kings can find a way to grit out one more game against a team that's going to be on the second night of a back-to-back, go 3-2 in this 5-game stretch, get themselves a little bit of a break, that would be huge. Anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. As always, shout out to the members of this channel, No Rain and Joe Mama, for the support, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.